Okay, let's talk about the sensation of taste. So taste comes from, or if you think about taste, you think about your tongue. And in your tongue, you have taste buds, okay? And those taste buds contain cells that have something called chemo receptors on them. Okay, so this is a picture or a drawing of a taste bud. So your taste bud is here, of course, and it covers something called the taste pore. And inside the taste pore are these cells that respond to taste of specific flavors. Okay, so these little cells here. Okay, so these cells, they have receptors on them that look like these little hairs there, and they take in little particles of what you are eating for taste. And the particles, of course, are mixed in saliva. These are chemoreceptors, so they're in a fluid. And I'm going to draw you a picture of the cell. So we have this cell with its little microvilli on them, and these little cells in the taste pore have receptors on them. So receptor, receptor, receptor. And there are about 13 different types of receptors within your taste pores, and they combine to create the taste that you end up experiencing when you're eating. And the tastes that you experience are combinations of 5 basic primary taste sensation. And those 5 primary, get a little better, darker color here. All right, so the 5 primary taste flavors are salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. And umami is really the only way to describe it, I would guess, is savory. But it's called umami. So these cells have receptors, or 13 types of receptors that take in these different flavors. And there's 2 ways that the cell takes in that flavor and gets it to your brain. And the first one has to do with salty and sour taste. So salty and sour. When something's salty or sour comes in, it binds to the receptor. And when that occurs, this cell creates an action potential. This isn't a nerve cell, but it creates an action potential along its plasma membrane. And when it gets down here, it causes, find another color here. There's a vesicle that contains serotonin. And that serotonin is exocytosed out here to a nerve. So we'll make that this color. So here's my little nerve. So it binds synapses with this cell, and the serotonin brings over the response, and it carries it to the central nervous system. Okay, we know that the taste goes to the brain and goes to the insula. Okay, that's where the gustatory nerves go. All right, so that's salty and sour. The other three types of flavor we'll do that, and we'll make this, I don't know, pink, and we'll make these look like that. So the other types of flavor, they do the same thing. They bind with the receptor, and now we're talking about sweet, bitter, and umami. And when this thing binds to this receptor, something different happens. We get a second messenger response. So this is the first messenger, and then we bind to the plasma membrane and then the G protein and blah, 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 until you get to the second messenger. The second messenger in this causes something interesting. It causes the release of ATP. And that ATP stimulates a nerve that goes to the central nervous system, or the insula, with those flavors. So again, these receptors, and there are 13 of them, and when they bind, they go through either this mechanism or this mechanism, and those are the flavors that we get. Those get sent into the CNS, to the insula, where we have conscious awareness of flavors and things that we eat. Okay? Remember, these receptors are chemoreceptors. They're both types of chemoreceptors. So that means we are getting this, these flavors, these little pieces of food, in solution, because when you eat, you get saliva, blah, blah, blah. So the taste comes from particles in solution, and then they bind here. I think that's about all you need to know. You don't need to know the different sections of the tongue. I don't think that's really that valid there. But you want to make sure you know these different ways that we get taste, or that taste happens, and understand basically the anatomy here. We've got our taste pore, remember? This is our tongue, taste pore. This area here is epithelia. And it is stratified squamous epithelia that is there. And then at the bottom here are these nerves, and these are what we are stimulating here. There. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is smell.